Dal, you're first.
Tonight I'm going to talk about the first medical Miranda rights that I've created. I went to the recent Constitutionalist Day celebration. It wasn't much of a celebration. The women in the act were screaming about wanting their rights too, and they were not provided their rights back in the day. And as you know, a lot of women were locked up and tortured in mental health facilities all over the country. 10 years after the Constitution was signed, the biggest, a large facility was created to lock women up. So the scenario tonight is that a certain council member got in an argument with a citizen, and the citizen was lying about the individual being elected or not, and she was obviously elected. She was not appointed. And so back in the day, if those two were married and they were getting an argument up there in front of the students, the woman would probably be put out and locked up and tortured. So over an argument like that. But even though nobody was elected back in the day. So these are the medical Miranda rights that I created in the first interactive form. First, you have the right to remain silent. Everything you say and do can be used against you. And so when that right is given, you check it off. You have the right to submit an incident report to the officer, paramedic company, fire department, medical agency, and all other entities involved in your transport to any medical facility for voluntary or involuntary commitment. You check that off. You have the right to a lawyer, court rules, and the right to an instructional manual for hearing and self-representation. Check that off. You have the right to a law enforcement incident report and incident report document viewing before court. Check that off. You have the right to view all paperwork written about you by doctors while in detainment. 6, you have the right to represent or request study materials for passing any independent living assessments before testing. And 7, you have the right to correct all doctor's notes by adding addendums attached to all medical files. Check that off. And then you have the right to a written cognition test and living assessment test of your choosing before trial. Right now, so I talked to Assistant Marshal Phillips, and she gave me a lot of information on fire safety, and which is important dealing with the mental health industry. And then, and so right now, Providence is doing sewing tests. 9, you have the right to not be injected with drugs, coerced or forced, pill medication before court. And if I run out of time, I'll talk to you later. You have the right to verify, transfer any documents proving independent abilities or credentials before court with assistance by staff. And right now, they won't acknowledge anything you've done in your life. It's all a delusion.
Mr.
11.
McDowell, you
Okay.
got through 10.
Okay. 10.
11 through 20 next week?
Okay. Well, no, I only get one form a month, so.
October.
2
Oh,
weeks.
next is a new month.
Next week is a
Okay.
new month.
Okay.
All right,
I got to get this.
Mr. Bocook. And with that, we'll go to open forum. Mr. McDowell. I think you got through the first 10 last week.
No, I'm starting over.
Well,
Starting
then
over.
how are we going to get through the 3 minutes?
Each month, each month I'll go over it really slowly, and it's going to evolve over time, and there'll be hyperlinks all over it. So this is Interactive Medical Miranda Rights, new name, and I'm developing it as an educational tool to prevent all kind of mental health crises for all citizens, not just the ones who are already had problems. So individuals at a young age will learn this system. So the first one, you have the right to remain silent to any law enforcement agency, hospital, transport company, fire department, or medical provider. So I have seen pictures online of people complaining. A senior citizen was bruised because she was strapped down and tortured for like, I don't know, I think she said like a day or so. And she refused to speak to the mental health provider. That wasn't in, or the hospital, that wasn't not in Spokane, Washington. That was in the east, I think. 2, you have the right to submit an incident report to any law enforcement agency, hospital, paramedic, fire department, or medical provider. So right now, it is possible to get your paperwork shredded up at Providence Sacred Heart or Deaconess, and so we need to create a system where an individual can check off that they have had the ability to hand over paperwork. 3, you have the right to not be injected with drugs, coerced, or forced pill form medications before court. So a lot of people, including myself, have been chemically restrained without any cognition test or anything, and then I couldn't defend myself in court. So everything slows down, everything gets blurry, you can't see, you can't comprehend anything, and you end up not being able to defend yourself in county court. 4, you have the right to all incident reports by any entity involved in your voluntary or involuntary commitment. So if anybody writes anything about you, you need to be able to read why you've been detained. I think that's a right. And so I looked through the court bench books, and it stated that that's not allowed. And a lot of these rules or these new rights I'm creating are not allowed by the county right now. But I'm trying to create the tools to calm individuals down so that they will be able to handle that kind of information. That's why I create all these types of diagrams and such. And lastly, you have the right to a lawyer, court rules, instruction manual for court hearing, and the right to self-representation.
Mr. McDowell,
okay.
thank you very much.
Okay, Alan.
Okay, tonight I'm going to talk about the first interactive medical Miranda rights I've created. As I stated before, 10 days before AutoZam, I was scheduled to be, run the Progressive Democrats of America. I didn't like what was going on, and I took on Jim McDermott and his entire medical industry, and I've been tortured for 10 years trying to figure this out. But trials and tribulations. So, as Chief Rizzi stated, we have a lot of problems as candidate in the first interview, we have a lot of problems with communication. He can't even talk to his son on the phone. Sometimes, his son will be across the table and be doing something on the phone, and he can't even talk to him. So our culture is completely different now. It's electronic, and we're not using a lot of the verbal interpersonal communication skills we have in the past. So I believe we need to move forward with different forms of communication and dealing with the police department and the medical field. You can stop me at 3 minutes, and I'll come back each month.
Thank you, Alan.
So the first in the interactive medical Miranda rights is you have the right to remain silent to any law enforcement agency, hospital, transport company, fire department, or medical provider. So even on my records, I remained silent once and came out with a whole lot of garbage on my report. So if I've had the right to remain silent and nobody's put anything garbage on my file, you click it off. That's the interaction that goes on, and with each medical Miranda right. Now, this is a hyperlinking document. In the future, there'll be videos and explanation within the document on how to deal with officers and the medical industry who has financial interest in detainment. So one problem I have right now with the police department is under number 11, it's kind of satire. I put a nutritional assessment, which will be on the medical Miranda rights in the future. But my problem with the police department right now is their nutrition, because we have a police chief who stated to Kip Hill and Rachel Alexander in the newspaper that he's got 2 cases of energy drinks in his office. And I don't agree with officers drinking a bunch of energy drinks, and I would like to know in the future what the policy is. And I understand that there's civil liberties and an individual can eat whatever they want within the FDA approval, but I don't want officers running around on energy drinks because it affects the brain, and officers can get completely out of hand on all that garbage. So I stated today that I think he should be drinking fruit smoothies because it's a much better nutrition and set a standard for the officers out there, because I can't deal with someone on 4 energy drinks in a day or 2 or sometimes even 1. It affects the mental capacities of the officer. Okay, another problem I have is lately I went into, I think this is it. Okay, so I need, this would be under the assessments section, like a customer service card. No, I'm the one that created the customer service question at the police interview process, the police chief interview process, and the statement was we need procedural justice. Now, I haven't gotten into that too much, and I did get into something similar in courts too that I'm going to add to this document. But my problem right now is that if I come in and I ask a question to the front desk, I want information, public information on who's in charge of psychology at the police department in assessing the mental health of a police officer, and when their gun rights are taken away, and when their responsibilities are taken away. I need someone to talk to about that. Oh boy, you don't ask that. I mean, screaming, yelling, you know, and so I'm stating we need to enact some kind of customer service. The police department needs to enact some kind of customer service method at the police department. There is a problem and it needs to be resolved. And I made out my little card, you know, I used the Senior Froggies card because Senior Froggies, it seems, has the best fast food customer service in town, and they have cards, and they're always interested in how the customer feels about their service. So I believe the police department needs, you know, cards or something for assessment and a process of evaluating those cards. But that's what I'll leave you with tonight. And I got through the first of the interactive medical interactive medical Miranda rights. And I'll also state that Chief Rizzi stated these medical Miranda rights that I talk about, it's absolutely possible, and it won't cost anything, he says, but he didn't actually see my rights. All he is explaining is that a piece of paper can be provided by an officer on what the individual's rights are in the future, and it wouldn't cost much for the paper and to have the officers carry that around. Now, he also made a statement that I'll say in the future about the medical industry being similar to Nazi concentration camps, and he had a story about that I'll talk in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Anyone else who didn't sign up who wanted to